Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. Happy Sunday. As promised, I am back after a video released yesterday. Now the topic of the video released yesterday had to do with whether it was possible for an INFJ to have the TI of an INTP, and the reactions have been interesting. I haven't quite responded to them yet, but I expect to do that soon. However, in this video today, we're going to be looking at the FE function more specifically, and the tentative title of this video, which by the time you watch it will no longer be tentative, is, well, INFJ is why you should value FE. So if you're curious about why you should be valuing the FE function, stick with me. But first, remember that I have written 2 books in the last year. Reference book on the INFJ, The Ecstatic Soul, available down below. All the links to Amazon provided, and my new novel. You could think of it as an existential exploration of the INFJ personality, specifically alienated INFJ personality from a fictional viewpoint. So if you are interested in either book, please support me. Both books, even better. You can also support me on Patreon. The links are below, and don't forget that, as I announced in the video yesterday, there will be some member-exclusive, patron-exclusive content shared on my Patreon page. There has been already some thoughts shared there with my patrons, but there will be more to come, including some video content. It's only €3, so that could be of interest to you. Now, in terms of the question of why INFJs should value FE, I thought that would be an interesting video to make, because it seems to me, partly due to my own experience, partly through interacting with other INFJs on forums, on YouTube, with my viewers, it seems to me that in a lot of cases, FE seems to be a slightly devalued function. And whether I'm right or not, you know, this is my impression, and your feedback will further enrich my understanding of this. But I think that there does seem to be a tendency, even in the community as a whole, and not just with INFJs, to devalue FE. And, well, we have to make FE great again. Wear the FE hat, you know. But in order to do this, maybe more certainly, an argument needs to be provided. Be aware that there is a cat right here, sleeping in my bed. Her name is Cookie, and there is a slight chance that she might interrupt me at some point. She does that sometimes, but we'll see. Anyway, so let's see, what can we say about FE and why it is devalued? There is certainly a tendency for people to associate FE with certain, you know, let's say socially negative or socially pejorative behaviors. I think that this could be potentially made worse by the fact that everybody seems to have an obsession with serial killers nowadays. Like, true crime is such a popular show, and when you have you know, when you have shows like Dahmer, exploring Jeffrey Dahmer, who seems to use FE in a manipulative way, and, you know, a lot of other ill-intentioned or worse people doing this. I was watching Primal Fear yesterday for the first time. Maybe some of you guys have seen this. You know, it was a movie, came out in the 90s, and certainly there is a character, I won't spoil it for you, but uses FE in a very, very manipulative and evil manner. So the picture that is provided in those cases is of FE as a function that really can and often is used in order to get to your goal through manipulative means, right? And through ultimately shallow means as well, because it's a function that is very, very good at navigating the social world and of maybe getting people to do what you want them to do in certain cases, at least in the idealized version, but without necessarily having to get into their mindsets. You know, like, maybe that's something that's more associated with FI, rightly or wrongly, by the way, but that FE is more about understanding certain types of social dynamics. You don't need to get into people's heads. You need more to get this intuitive conception of what their motivations are going to be in this particular situation, and manipulate the situation so as to manipulate their motivations and then get to your goal. Now, that's not doing anything for the good reputation of the FE function. Whether or not FE can be used in this way, well, that's a topic unto itself. I think that certainly it is possible, and we see that enacted every day for individuals who are high FE users, proficient FE users. In other words, users that are not just preferential toward FE, but also proficient. If you remember the insights of the video released yesterday, it's certainly possible for them to use what could be described as conditioning or manipulation. I think that to deny this would be to lack in a certain kind of credibility, because we see it among politicians. It's not just fictional characters, that we see do it. We see it among politicians, among managers in business, various jobs. We see it a lot among salespeople. We see it in religious groups, religious leaders, cult leaders. So there are examples of this. But the point that I want to make in this video, perhaps primarily, is that FE does not limit itself to this by any means, and that it would be irrational, ill-conceived and irrational to devalue FE on the basis of some ways in which it can be employed for the wrong reasons. Because one thing that people don't appreciate enough is that FE, as being a function of extroverted judgment, like TE is an executive function in some sense. It's the function that intervenes when it comes to delivering results, getting results. It's a function that is therefore very visible when it comes to certain goals being achieved. When a goal is achieved, often what we see as the main cause of the goal, as the main instrument, is the from in the Jungian terms anyway, it's the extroverted judgment function, whether that be T or FE, depending on the particular type of a person. But what we don't realize, is that there's a myopia involved a lot of the time. Because if you want to achieve a goal that is not a good goal, that could be described as a bad goal or an evil goal in certain cases, as a morally questionable or reprehensible goal, well, there was a whole chain of reasoning, there's a whole chain of planning that is involved. The executive function will be very visible in the delivering of the goal, and it will indeed be an instrument, but a lot of other functions will be involved. So in other words, whatever is evil about what someone's doing doesn't have to do with a particular function. It involves all the function in the planning, but the functions are just instruments that are used for a particular purpose. They're not themselves evil. So first of all, whenever someone carries morally questionable goals, all the functions are involved, because they use all their functions when they're reasoning about how to achieve their goal. The JE functions might be more visible, but that doesn't mean that they are more important really in the articulation of the entire scheme. So that's a myopic kind of view. But the other point that's important to emphasize is that next to that, there is a distinction to be made between the questionable nature of a goal and the status of whatever you use to attain your goal. Whatever you're using, the instrument you're using to attain your goal could be used for great goals. You can be a Martin Luther King as well, or a Nelson Mandela, using FE for goals that could be seen as a lot more morally praiseworthy, and not to mention Jesus, many other people, the Prophet Muhammad and Gandhi. So it all depends what you're doing with it. What's evil is, or good, is really the person and their motivations and their dispositions and inclinations. It's not the functions that they muster to achieve their goals. So that's one first important point that I want to emphasize. But there's another point that I want to emphasize, is that even though FE is an executive function in this sense, it is not limited to this kind of shaping and influencing of social interactions. That is all too often what FE is reduced to, and the basis of this stereotyping and this devaluing of FE. And this might be a reason why a lot of INFJs devalue FE. They devalue it because INFJs, being introverts, tend to strongly identify with being introverts. Therefore, they don't strongly identify with being in diverse and regular and numerous social interactions. The consequence of this is INFJs are more likely to be seen to value, for reasons of avoiding cognitive dissonance, NI, of course, dominant function. Anyone who's not self-hating is going to be predisposed towards valuing their dominance. That's fine. So INTJs and INFJs will tend to have a strong valuation for the NI function. Now, being introverts, they're also quite likely to value TI. So the introverted functions of an INFJ, NI and TI, I think, according to my hypothesis, will tend to be the most valued functions of that type. Exception might be made for those INFJs that are very close to the middle in terms of the extroversion-introversion spectrum. You know, like the most extroverted of INFJs might be more likely to value FE. Maybe in the same way that the more introverted among the ENFPs will be more likely to value introverted functions such as FI. Same for ENTPs, TI, and so on and so forth. But there is going to be a predisposition toward the introverted functions. And I think this is kind of what we see, to be honest, in the literature, in people's posts, in YouTube videos, on Reddit. That is quite noticeable as well, is that I see a lot of people, a lot of INFJs in this case, talking about how they can cultivate their NI, how they can be more in touch with their NI, and also how they can have better TI, how they can be more harmonized in their use of TI. It's not so common to see INFJs talking about how they can develop their FE function, how they can be in more harmony with their FE function. And that is actually a real conundrum that is only explained, I think, again, according to this hypothesis that, or it's premise rather than a hypothesis, that since INFJs are introverts, it's true that INFJs online are probably going to be slightly biased towards highly introverted, because we're never really encountering then all those INFJs that are maybe slightly more extroverted and don't spend much time online. They exist, and there's a lot of them. In fact, the majority of them probably. But anyway, so, that's, I think, what explains, if you combine this tendency to overvalue introverted functions with this sort of bad reputation that FE tends to have in some circles, then you get this devaluation of FE among INFJs. And I think that that's a really bad thing for the INFJ, primarily. Now, if you have read The Ecstatic Soul, as I believe you have, maybe most of you, or maybe some of you, you know that this book, in many ways, attempts to make a strong argument for the valuation of FE. I will not repeat that argument, but in addition to the fact that this will obviously lead to more balanced individuals, cognitively balanced individuals need to have a strong equilibrium between their introverted functions and their extroverted functions. Don't forget that the NITI looping is a direct consequence of the fact that as a result of not valuing your extroverted functions, you remain in a permanent looping between the introverted functions. NI and TI do not actually have any contact with the external world. So how are you going to get to any conclusion that is in any way satisfying for you if you do not have that connection with the external world? Now, SE is, of course, also very important, but since SE is a lot less accessible and integratable in principle for INFJs than FE is, why not focus first on FE? The book, The Ecstatic Soul, makes an argument that you can access SE indirectly through FE, because when you interact with other people, channeling the use of your FE function in the process, you're in fact also using SE. The functions come together. Valuing of NI and TI, valuing of FE and SE. Use your SE because that will put you more in touch with the external world and make you a lot less of a prey to alienation. But lastly, another important point I wanted to make is there's an irony in the fact that sometimes INFJs will talk about other INFJs in this kind of admiring tone, or this, oh, I wish I was like them tone. I wish I was more like them because they have such good TI. Now, I'm told that often, so I know what I'm talking about. Whether or not, it is true that I have very good TI. I hear that a lot. So there's a clear valuing of TI also through these regrets or these wishes expressed by INFJs that they were more like those INFJs that they see as having good TI. Well, the irony is that in at least half of those cases, what they think is TI is really FE. So really what they're saying is, I wish I had more FE, but they don't realize it. And they think that what they're saying is, I wish I had more TI. Why do they think that they're seeing TI when what they're seeing is FE? Well, because, first of all, because of all that I've said about FE, it's assumed to be just limited to this realm of interaction, social interactions, whereas in fact, FE is much more fundamental. FE is also about being able to articulate a point of view. You cannot be socially effective if you're not able to speak effectively, to articulate your point of view effectively. That's true for TE in different ways. So imagine that you have a really good idea and that you're able to express it very well, very coherently. And if it's a logically sound idea, your ability to articulate it well will showcase its logical soundness. And people will think, oh, then that means he has good TI or she has good TI. But in fact, it only shows that she or he has good FE. Because TI is actually concerned, yes, with a certain sense of logical soundness, but it's not concerned at all with being able to articulate it. TI is an introverted function. And if you look at people who are very, very high and very, very sort of libidinally engaged in TI and then not in a lot of other functions, they don't tend to be very good speakers. They don't tend to be able to even show that they have good logic at all. Those who do, like some Jordan Peterson, it's because they have high FE. So the FE allows the TI to shine, but the FE is equally important and is a lot more rational and logical than people think. So really think about it, because this might help you also to value FE more. When you think that you're valuing TI, when you think that you see reading well-developed TI and INFJs and you wish you were the same, really what you're seeing is well-developed FE, and that might suggest that what you really want is well-developed FE. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys, and I will see you next week. Don't forget about my Patreon page. See you soon.